Let's kick things off with two people who, at first glance, couldn't be more different. You've got John Calvin, the super serious theologian of predestination, and then you've got William Shakespeare, the playwright of, human possibility and forgiveness. I mean, on the surface, they're like oil and water, right? But what if they actually shared a secret? A kind of psychological tool that completely shaped how an entire generation saw their own lives and the stories they told. Stick with me on this one.
So on one side, you have Calvin's world. It's all about divine foreclosure, sobering limits, a world where you seek salvation with fear and trembling. And on the other side, Shakespeare's world, full of cakes and ale, free will, and second chances. I mean, we're talking about two totally opposite ways of looking at our place in the universe.
So the big question is, what on earth could possibly connect the world of a stern theologian in Geneva with the bustling stage of an English playwright? Well, the answer, as it turns out, is the very engine that drives all of our greatest stories: suspense.
Okay, so the bridge between these two worlds starts with this really powerful idea. It's a concept that works just as well in a church as it does in a theater. It's something that transforms the audience into insiders, people who know a secret that the poor characters on stage have no idea about.
And that tool, it's called dramatic irony. You know that feeling, right? When you're watching a horror movie and you know the killer's in the closet, but the hero is just walking right towards it. The suspense comes from that gap, that unbearable tension, while you're just screaming at the screen, waiting for them to finally find out what you've known all along.
And here's the thing. This idea of life being a performance was everywhere back then. They even had a name for it, the Theatra Mundi, or the theater of the world. Francis Bacon put it perfectly. In this huge play of human life, we're all just the actors on stage. The only true audience members, the ones who get to see the whole show, are God and the angels.
And this is where it all clicks into place. If you're a follower of Calvin, your life really is a play. You're the main character. But here's the twist. God isn't just in the audience. He's also the playwright. He already knows the ending because he wrote it. And that creates the most intense form of dramatic irony imaginable for your own life.
I mean, just try to imagine the sheer psychological weight of that. Your ultimate fate, heaven or hell, is already set in stone, but you don't get to know which one it is. The final scene of your story is a secret that won't be revealed until the moment you die. So your entire life becomes this high-stakes performance, playing out your part for an all-knowing audience of one.
So how did people cope with that kind of constant cosmic suspense? Well, they didn't just curl up in a ball and wait. No, they became detectives in their own lives, constantly on the hunt for any clue they could find about how their story was going to end.
Yeah, this was anything but a passive belief. It was a really active, lifelong mission they called the search for assurance. People got into this thing called experimental piety, where they would just meticulously examine every thought, every feeling, every action, looking for any sign at all, any piece of evidence that they were one of the chosen ones.
And a lot of this was systematized by an English thinker named William Perkins. He came up with this brilliant, kind of paradoxical idea. He said that the very act of searching your soul, of trying to figure out if you're saved, was itself a sign that you were probably saved. The fact that you were so worried about it was actually a good sign.
So Perkins and others basically laid out a kind of spiritual roadmap called the Ordo Salutis, or the Order of Salvation. A person's life was meant to follow this plot. You'd search for evidence of your calling to the faith, then your justification, and then you'd try to see yourself sanctifying or growing more holy, all to build a case that you were in fact on the path to final glorification.
And all of this entire life of searching and clue gathering, it all built up to one final dramatic scene: the deathbed. This was it, the big reveal, the moment when a lifetime of suspense would finally be resolved. And people would literally gather around to watch, like it was the series finale of someone's life, just waiting to see how it all turned out.
Okay, so let's take that whole idea, that private, internal drama, and walk it right across the street to the Globe Theater. Because this exact same psychological structure, this intense suspense of knowing the end is written but not knowing the details, well, that is precisely what Shakespeare became a master of.
Because here's the thing about Shakespearean suspense. A lot of the time, it's not about us finding out what happens next. We often already know. The real suspense is in the agonizing wait for the characters to catch up to what we, the audience, have known all along. The tension is all in that gap between their ignorance and our knowledge.
I mean, think about it. The opening prologue of Romeo and Juliet flat out tells us they're both going to die. The suspense isn't if, it's how. In Othello, we know Desdemona is innocent, and we are forced to watch an absolute horror as a single, simple handkerchief seals her fate. Or in Hamlet, we have to listen to Laertes lecture Ophelia about her virtue, all while we know that she's about to drown. It's just agonizing to watch.
But for my money, the absolute peak of this technique, the most powerful example, has to be the chaotic, heart-stopping final scene of King Lear. It is a masterclass in using suspense to create this feeling of both cosmic doom and frantic last-minute hope.
So what happens is you get these two totally different speeds clashing at the end. At first, everything is slow, very formal, as Edgar gives this long speech about divine justice. But then, suddenly, the dying Edmund has a change of heart and reveals he ordered Cordelia to be killed. And the whole pace just explodes. It's "quickly send" and "haste thee for thy life," and Albany screaming, "Run, run, oh run." We know tragedy's coming, but that desperate, failed race against a fate we've already foreseen, that's what makes it absolutely unbearable.
Okay, let's tie this all together. Let's bring these two worlds, Calvin and Shakespeare, back into the same room. Because the anxious Puritan in his study and the captivated audience member in the Globe Theater, they were, in this really strange way, having the exact same emotional experience.
Both of them are trapped in this state of suspenseful waiting. The Calvinist is waiting for the main character in their own life, which is them, to finally learn the ending that God has already written. And the theatergoer is waiting for the characters on stage to finally discover the awful truth that the audience already knows.
And this brings us right back to our guy William Perkins, and this beautiful idea he had. He defined the word conscience by its Latin roots, con, which means with, and scire, to know. So for him, conscience was a knowing with God. The entire point of a religious life was to close that knowledge gap, to finally get to share in the secret that God has known about you all along.
And that is why we can watch these plays over and over again, even though we know exactly what's going to happen. The magic isn't in the surprise ending. The power is in that shared experience of watching and waiting for that inevitable, often heartbreaking moment of discovery. It's the very same power that drove an entire culture to search their souls for just a tiny glimpse of the final page.
So I'll leave you with this question. The next time you watch a hero on a stage, wrestling with their fate, being forced to confront a terrible truth you've known from the beginning, will you just see a play, or will you see the ghost of an entire culture's anxious, desperate, and deeply human search for salvation?